Okay, we are going to get going. I know there's some of us who are still kind of getting settled, but we are ready to rock and roll. Our guest speakers are here, and we're very excited to have you all here. Thank you so much for participating in our virtual Courageous Conversation series called Paying It Forward. We are thrilled to see all of you, and we also hope that you are safe and healthy and sane and sound as we have been experiencing this physical distancing for the past few weeks. So welcome everybody. My name is Jessica Green, and I am your host for tonight. Over the course of this year, we've been exploring how to foster greater inclusion and belonging in our community. My name is Jessica. Oh, I just said that, didn't I? Together with Zena Jacques, Claire Nelson, and the entire Courageous Conversations team, we welcome you to this virtual edition. Tonight, we have three amazing guests here to chew on some questions about the dollars and cents of inclusion. How does our spending and giving align with our values? How can we be more conscientious consumers and investors? How can we share resources for the common good? Let's talk about those ways we can each be a part of creating a more inclusive economy with our special guests, Marguerite Griffin, Jessica Drost-Yagan, and Sam Yagan, who also happen to be husband and wife. Welcome. Marguerite H. Griffin is a Senior Vice President at Northern Trust. As Director of Philanthropic Advisory Services, Marguerite is responsible for the delivery and growth of Northern Trust's philanthropic advisory services to wealth management clients. She specializes in administering charitable trusts and private foundations and facilitating family philanthropy retreats. She also advises clients regarding impact investing, strategic philanthropy, international philanthropy, family succession planning and board development, governance and risk management for nonprofit organizations. Marguerite received a BA from Washington University in St. Louis and a JD from Northwestern University School of Law, and she is a member of the American Bar Association, the Chicago Bar Association, the Chicago Council on Planned Giving, and the Chicago Estate Planning Council. Marguerite is admitted to practice before the Illinois Supreme Court. She is also an active volunteer, advisor, and board member with several charitable and cultural institutions, including Art Institute of Chicago, Audubon Great Lakes, Chicago Foundation for Women, the Chicago Symphony Orchestra, the Chicago Community Trust, Forefront, the Ravinia Festival, and WTTW WFMT. Welcome, Marguerite. Sam Yagan is CEO of ShopRunner and the former vice chairman of Match Group, a position he assumed after serving as the company's chief executive officer and leading it through a period of explosive growth that culminated in its IPO. I don't think I was an investor, and so I didn't get to have fun with that IPO, but well done. He has co-founded several companies, including SparkNotes, eDonkey, OkCupid, Techstar Chicago, Firestarter Fund, and Corazon Capital. An Illinois native and the son of Syrian immigrants, Sam was instilled with an entrepreneur trait at a young age and has been named to Time Magazine's 100 Most Influential People in the World, Fortune Magazine's 40 Under 40, Crain's Chicago 40 Under 40, Billboard Magazine's 30 Under 30, Crain's Tech 25, D Magazine's Dallas 500, and ranked only number 19 on Silicon Alley's Insider's Most Inspiring and Influential People. Sam, next time you gotta go for number 1. Sam holds a BA with honors in applied mathematics and economics from Harvard University and an MBA from Stanford. He is married to his high school sweetheart, Jessica Drost-Yagan, and they live with their 3 children in Chicago. Welcome, Sam. Jessica Drost-Yagan is the CEO of Impact Engine, an impact investing firm that manages venture capital and private equity funds. Jessica also serves as managing partner of Impact Engine Ventures. She is extensively engaged personally in impact investing and evangelizing on behalf of the impact investing field. Prior to Impact Engine, Jessica led the creation of McDonald's Corporation's global and U.S. sustainable sourcing strategies and worked in the field of urban economic development at the Initiative for a Competitive Inner City. She is currently on the boards of Metropolitan Planning Council, One Goal Chicago, the Honeycomb Project, the Rustandi Center for Social Sector Innovation at Chicago Booth, and Fixer. Crain's Chicago business named her to its list of 40 Under 40 in 2013, and she served as a 2014 Leadership Greater Chicago Fellow. Jessica holds a BA from Haverford College, an MBA from Stanford University, and an MPA from Harvard University. She lives in Chicago with Sam, who is also sitting right across from her right now, and her 3 children, whom they've locked outside. All right, welcome everyone. We're really happy to have you here. So although we find ourselves in this virtual space, we will continue to honor our grounding virtues of generous listening, patience, humility, hospitality, and adventurous civility. Please switch off all cell phones or any distractions, and please mute yourself when you are listening. We will be video recording the presentation part of this, so we need background noise to be a minimum, please. And in an effort to create space for honest sharing, we ask that as individuals share their stories in breakout dialogues later tonight, please treat these stories as sacred and let them remain with you upon leaving. Thank you. Producing this series is a team effort, and we have wonderful partners to thank. Barrington's White House, Barrington Area Library, Be Strong Together, Barrington Area Community Foundation, BMO Wealth Management, Sue and Rich Padula, Kim Duchessois, and Urban Consulate for their partnership on this journey. And extra special thanks to JP Long, who is the wizard behind the curtain tonight, running the controls for this virtual experience. Thank you, JP. Okay, so if you have a pencil and paper, you might want to jot down some notes about the schedule tonight, how this is going to work. We'll start with a video and a word from my co-host, Zena. Then we'll have our conversation with our guest experts. Then we'll take a brief 5-minute break to stretch and refill our drinks, because I know you have them secretly off screen. Then we'll come back together for smaller breakout dialogues. So at that point, you'll just want to stay on the line and you'll be automatically moved into a breakout room. And at the very end, just before 9 p.m. tonight, we'll all come back together for a final word and closing from Reverend Zena, just as we do when we are in real life together. So let's dive in. This topic is something that I'm really interested in. I have been unpacking this question of what it means to pay it forward in my own personal choices, as well as in my work in philanthropy for a while now. And during that exploration, one person who has inspired the questions I've been asking myself is philanthropist, activist, and author Lynn Twist. We'd like to share a snippet of Lynn speaking with Oprah that served as a guide for the theme of tonight's session.
So the first toxic myth, I call them the toxic myths in the great lie of scarcity. Now, once again, this is an unconscious, unexamined set of assumptions, a paradigm in which we live that has us look out in the world before we even think and see there's not enough to go around. And someone somewhere is always going to be left out, and I got to make sure it's not me and mine, whoever I consider that to be. I feel bad about that, but I can't help them until I have way more than I need to take care of me and mine. So the first myth is there's not enough. The second myth is more is better. More of anything, more of everything is better. More, 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 more. And we live in, as we all know, a tyranny of messages that don't stop telling us we need more of this, more of that. We're not tall enough, we're not skinny enough, we're not educated enough, we're not pretty enough, we're not this enough or that enough, until we accumulate more, until we buy more. So the more is better culture is everywhere, and it doesn't leave us alone. And then the third toxic myth is, that's just the way that it is, and there's nothing you can do about it. And the third one is, I think, the worst, because it holds the whole mindset in place. It has us think that we can't do anything about it, so we don't try. It's the source of resignation. It's the source of people not thinking they can make a difference. It's the source of institutionalized racism. It's the source of institutionalized poverty. There's nothing we can do about it. It's just the way that it is. So we live in a culture that demeans human life, that exalts more of anything and everything, makes us feel that we're not enough, doesn't give us any access to our wholeness, and has us think that's just the way that it is. And no wonder people are miserable in their relationship with money.
Yeah. And you say, too, I love this, that if you want a clear picture of your priorities in life, who you are and what you care about, look at your checkbook.
Yeah, yeah. It really tells you what you care about, you know, and your credit card bill and your bank statement. You can see exactly where your priorities are, and sometimes it's not that aligned with your soul.
Good evening, friends. It is wonderful to welcome you in this space and to know that you have committed these 2 hours to learning about paying it forward, how we might as individuals, whether our wealth is great or small, how we might as individuals have an impact, how we might deny that third myth, knowing that we can make a difference. So thank you. Thank you, Jess, for that fabulous opening, and welcome. Welcome to a time of discovery and courageous conversations. The writer, the author, Ayn Rand, has a quote that I love. I'm going to read it to be sure I get it right. Money is only a tool. It will take you wherever you wish to go, but it may not replace you as the driver. Money is only a tool. It will take you wherever you want to go, but it may not replace you as the driver. Friends, imagine a surgeon with a scalpel who is not trained, and he uses that tool in ways that are harmful. Imagine an architect who is not skilled and he has blueprints before him but knows not what to do with them. Imagine a cellist who has a fine instrument before them but knows not what to do. The tool is there, the tool is ready, but the driver, the human, has also to be ready. Our time together this evening is meant to sharpen our readiness, because each of us has the tool of money. Again, whether it's great or small, each of us makes decisions about what we do with our money. It's only the tool. You are the driver. And how we prepare and study and learn to operate this tool to maximum benefit changes not only our lives, but dispels that third myth. We do make a difference. And Lynn Twist is right. When we are not aligned with the way we use our tools, when the way we use our tools is not aligned with our souls, we are out of sync with ourselves. And that's just no way to be in the world. So come along on this journey. We're going to find out how to get that in sync. We're going to find out how to use our tools, and we're going to find out how to dispel all of those myths. We have enough. We don't have to hoard. We will make a difference. And tonight, the universe has given us amazing teachers, and frankly, even a more amazing moderator. So Jess, we're in your hands. Let's go forward. Let's be courageous.
Oh, thank you, Zena. That is so kind. Now I have to deliver, a little pressure. Okay, let's get started. So that everyone can be on the same page, we might be using some terms that you have heard before, but these are the definitions that we are using when we say them. So even though we are talking about dollars and cents and investing, when we say equity or equitable, we mean fairness in both process and outcomes, where all groups have access to the resources and opportunities necessary to improve the quality of their lives, where differences in life outcomes cannot be predicted on the basis of race, class, or other dimensions of identity. When we say social impact, we're referring to the effect an organization's actions have on the well-being of a community and the individuals and families within. Okay, so Sam, Jessica, and Marguerite, you are up. Each of you are helping to build a more inclusive and equitable economy from different seats and angles: philanthropy, investing, corporate responsibility, to name a few. I'm going to start with a few questions directed to each of you specifically, and then we'll circle back around to everyone for some more general advice at the end. So Sam, let's start with you. You're a serial entrepreneur. You've started, grown, and sold a number of companies. What has been the evolution of your interest in equity and inclusion, and why do you think it's important for the business world?
So much to cover in one simple question. Thank you so much for having me, and thanks for convening this great conversation. I think if I'm being candid and honest, I probably spent the first 15 or 16 years of my career not really thinking about equity and inclusion at all. I had started my first company in my college dorm room, literally, as a senior back last century. And I felt such an obligation to grow the business, succeed as an entrepreneur, that really nothing else entered the equation for me. I simply thought my obligation was to achieve success for my employees, for my investors, for myself. And that was really what drove me. And I had several startups, both successful and unsuccessful. And ultimately, what I really realized about startups is they tend to be very founder driven. And the people who worked for the startups that I had founded really, they largely looked like me. They largely thought like me. And they largely were drawn to a culture that was very much of the founders, if you will. And so without really being intentional any way in particular, we ended up with a group that largely was not representative of the world and looked a lot like the founders. And I don't even think I really noticed that, but to the extent I noticed it, I kind of said, well, it's not on me to solve all of this. I've got, I'm a startup. I'm just trying to survive. It's probably for the first, 15, 16 years of my career, that was kind of mostly my mindset. And then I had a great opportunity to become CEO of a big global business that had acquired my company. And I then had the opposite problem. I now had over 1,000 employees across the globe. And as I became more aware of the issues of equity and inclusion, I realized that the company was in some ways so far along with thousands of employees, over 1,000 employees, that it was very hard to make a change. That the company was in many ways, to make a 3% change in a distribution, you'd have to go hire 30 people or something like that, which just given the pace at which we were growing would take a very long time to do. So I left that job in 2016, and when I thought about what I wanted to do next, and largely challenged by my wife Jess, who you'll hear from in a bit, how can I use my time to make a difference? How can I lead differently? How can I create a company that had different characteristics and attributes? And how can I be a model for the world that I wanted to exist? And so I simply asked the question, what can I do? What can I do differently? How can I be that model? And so I started by saying I wanted to change myself, and I wanted to make ShopRunner being a model for Chicago. And by the way, we have all kinds of faults ourselves, and I'm not saying that we're perfect. I'm saying that by putting things like equity and inclusion at the forefront of the business and making it a pillar of the business, you can actually build a very different kind of company. And so, when I took over this company called ShopRunner in 2016, it was based in San Mateo. It looked like a lot of technology companies do, largely male, largely Caucasian. And when I moved it to Chicago, we really had a chance to rebuild the organization. And we said, let's be affirmative and intentional in building the company that we want to build. And so one of the first things I did was I hired a chief people officer named Lindsay, who I think is I'd say the best in Chicago, one of the best in Chicago at really thinking through DEI and putting it at the center of a company culture and a company's business strategy. And I think by hiring an executive with that at her core, I think really sent a strong signal to other executives and to the entire organization that this was going to be important. As we established corporate values, we put inclusivity as one of the pillars, one of the things that we stand for. And that when we hire people and we look for their match against our values, inclusivity is an affirmative thing that we look for in those people. And so that has been a change. We've thought about how do you build a technology company with a consciousness and a focus on DEI at its core. We do things like pay equity studies, which more companies are doing now, but I think we were one of the first. We were one of the early adopters of. And what's important about that is when you do the study, are you willing to own the results? And frankly, the results were short of what I wanted. We were not at the equity levels that I desired. And we shared it with the company. We told the entire company, here's where we stand. We're on a journey together to do this. And that kind of candor and transparency, I think, earns a lot of respect and trust, and a general belief that we don't have the answers, but we are asking the questions, and we're going down a path that that everyone can align to and see the reason for it. I also think in these kinds of environments, it has to start at the top. If you want to make these issues like DEI, central to your business strategy, you have to be. I think it has to be authentically embodied by the entire executive team, and first and foremost, the CEO. And so, I think as people think about who they're investing in and where they are, what companies they're buying from with their checkbook, and even what companies they're working for or encouraging their kids to work for, their friends to work for, I think really, you have your wallet and you have your time, and those are two of the most important assets that you have. And to the extent that you can put those behind companies you believe in, and that have values that you believe in, I think you can really make a huge impact that way. And just small things that I think the CEO can do, or leadership can do, is to make sure that you are, again, living the change that you want to see. So we, for autism awareness the other day, last month, one of our office managers has an autistic child, and she posted in Slack, our messaging platform, that she wanted people to wear blue. And I usually wear my charcoal colored ShopRunner sweatshirt, and I went out and I grabbed my blue sweatshirt and I took a picture of myself and posted it. And just those small acts, I think, really make a big difference to others, who then have the courage to go and speak for the issues they care about and to advocate for themselves. And then maybe the last thing I'll say, and Jess, feel free to ask any follow-ups. I think if you really ask yourself, what can I do? I actually think there's a lot. And so a simple thing. I have the great privilege to be asked to speak at conferences and to join boards of directors and to join panels. And I simply started saying that I won't join any panels that aren't diverse. And I was on a board, and I said, if you don't have a woman join the board, in the next 9 months, I'm going to resign. And if a conference wants me to speak at a panel, back when we had conferences, if a conference wants me to speak at a panel, I want to have a woman co-panelist or someone of color. And that does two things. One, it tells other people that this is important. And two, it allows me to tell other people who are in similar positions to me that I'm actually walking the talk, that I'm not just saying, oh, you should support diversity more. It allows me to say, here are the things I'm doing to make a difference. And while small, each little action I take is a small one. And I acknowledge that. My hope is simply to make my contribution and hopefully pave the way for others in similar situations to say, I too am not going to be on a all-male panel, an all-white panel, an all-male board, or an all-white board, and force that change that we believe in.
Thank you, Sam. I love listening to all of those small changes that actually have really large impact. I'm just curious, how do you get feedback from your employees with regards to your successes or attempts at successes? What does that look like?
It can be hard and painful, but we ask for feedback all the time. whether it is every time we have like a town hall or an all hands meeting, we ask for feedback. We do quarterly surveys of our employee base. We work with a company in Chicago called Holistic that specializes in measuring DEI at mid to large size companies, and benchmarks us against others. And there's an old saying that what is measured is what matters. And so I think that it's really critical for companies that say they want to make a difference to be measuring these things. And then, in terms of feedback, just a simple example, like I try to actually do a survey feedback after every meeting, not every single meeting I'm in, but big meetings that I'm in. I ask all the participants to give feedback, and I got feedback just yesterday. I was in a meeting earlier this week, and a female had mispronounced a word, and I jokingly corrected her because I had mispronounced the word so many times in my own learning of this word, but it came across as being condescending and patronizing to others in the meeting, and so it shocked me to hear that, because I literally meant it as self-deprecating. I meant it to be making fun of myself, but the people in the meeting said, to have a male CEO, making a joke at a junior, she was the most junior person in the meeting, as it happens, female participant, rubbed people the wrong way. And I meant it only in literally in a self-deprecating way, but it didn't come across that way. So you have to be asking for the feedback. You have to be willing to hear the feedback. And I sent the woman an email immediately. I said, I'm so sorry that you may have taken it this way. And if she didn't, but again, just having that top of mind and being willing, having a culture where somebody felt comfortable giving me that feedback was actually what I was really proud of.
Thank you so much for sharing. I'm going to move on to Marguerite now. Marguerite, your work is in advising in the philanthropic and nonprofit sector. Tell us a little bit about how you became interested in charitable giving and how you came to this work.
Thank you, Jess. Happy to be here. So I grew up in a household of musicians, and in various different ways we were taught that giving back was just what you needed to do as a person. My grandmother would say, everyone can be great because everyone can serve. She always said this. It wasn't until I went to college and realized that that was actually a quote from Martin Luther King Jr. But it was something that really governed how we participated in all of our activities. My grandmother taught piano lessons for 60 years, and she would teach kids on the block, many of whom couldn't pay her. I think for most of the time, she only charged $5 for a 30-minute lesson. My mom was also a musician, but she also instilled in my brother and me a sense of curiosity about the world. She always helped us know that whatever we wanted to do, whatever we were interested in, we could pursue. She encouraged us to pursue our passions, and we were able to watch as she explored hers. And many of the things that she did were about helping people so that they could shine, and it was often behind the scenes. So in my own giving, when I think about charitable giving, I am always focused on access, because when we were children, we had access, and I'll just speak about the creative arts. We would go to art classes. Some of them were free. They were sponsored by the Park District. We would listen to classical music in Grant Park. We would save our time and go to museums on the free days. But we always had access to things that brought us a lot of joy, that we could learn from. And that's something that's very important to me. Wherever you are, whatever your race, your economic ability, to be able to have access to the things that I believe create a better quality of life is what I'm supporting. I started my career as an estate planning attorney, which was a detour from aircraft finance, which I did for several years. And I also focused on tax-exempt organizations. So as an estate planning attorney, I wanted to work with clients who were interested in using their wealth to make a difference in the world, to give back. I drafted a lot of charitable trusts, a lot of private foundations, and it was really quite fulfilling work. And essentially, I was there to help them begin their journeys and to create charitable legacies for themselves and for their families. I also did a lot of pro bono work when I was practicing law, and volunteered with Lawyers for the Creative Arts, because I kind of felt that if I had to work, 50, 60 hours a week, the least I could do would be to help artists who were out there, perfecting their craft. And I was lucky enough to work on the tax-exempt applications for Streetwise and Chicago Acapella, two organizations that I'm very happy to say are still around. So when I moved into financial services, I continued working with clients to help them with their charitable entities. And about 5 years after joining Northern Trust, which is where I am now and just celebrated 20 years, which is pretty amazing. I went to our senior management and I said, what's most important to individuals who have created wealth for themselves after they've taken care of their families is how are they going to continue to make a difference? How are they going to move the needle and create change and help make the world a better place? And we need to have someone on staff who can help them move through that journey. And so I made a proposal, and with the help of mentors and a lot of my colleagues at Northern Trust, we launched the Philanthropic Advisory Services group at Northern Trust, and that was 15 years ago. So my journey toward charitable giving and the career that I have really started with my family and some of the things that I learned from a lot of matriarchs in my family, and then individuals along the way who really decided that, I am going to be great because I can serve. And charitable giving and philanthropy is just one way that you can be of service to others.
Thank you so much. So obviously, the values, not obviously, but some of the values that we inherit are passed down through generations. And one of the major questions that I'm always asking myself is, how do I align my values and my giving? And when I say giving, I just mean, how do I, share my privileges or my money, or what does that look like? And that seems to be exactly what you're in the business of advising. So when you are working with your clients, for someone who's interested in being an agent of change for greater equity and inclusion, you can pretend it's me, how would you advise them to think about aligning their spending with their values? Where do you start?
Yeah, so I start by asking our clients and any individual a lot of questions so that I can get a picture of what's important to them. So sometimes you're not able to articulate what's important to you, but we spend a lot of time getting to what it is you value, what's important, what keeps you up at night. How is it that you want the world to look as a result of your contributions? So those are some just initial questions. We also talk a lot about legacy. And during this time, since I've been working from home, I've been reading a lot, much more than I've been able to in the past. And I love Greek mythology. And the gods and the mortals, they all want to be remembered in some way. They want to be the greatest warrior. They want to be the faithful servant or wife or the wise person. And some of those roles may or may not be outdated now, but they always seem to be thinking about their legacy whenever they took actions. And so that word legacy is a small word, but it can mean so many different things. How do you want to be remembered? How do you want to describe or be able to share with your family the footprint that you've had in the time that you're here? So we spend a lot of time asking questions and really digging deep into what a legacy means. We also ask questions about core passions, because if I find that philanthropy, if it's going to be effective and if it's going to be impactful, it has to be based on, it has to be fueled by an individual's or family's passions. That's what's going to drive it. That's what's going to help them continue to learn about what it is they want to do, to take risks, and to stick in it, to be there for the long haul. And then a question about, if there is a family, to ask, what kind of future do I want for my children? As an example, I worked with a family, a Northern Trust client in Connecticut, and they were interested in, they began thinking about impact investing, which I know Jessica is going to talk a little bit more about. But the father was thinking about, let's think about how we can be socially responsible with our investments. And he was also interested in, making sure that the financial return of their portfolios continued to grow. But his daughters were more impressed and really wanted to find out, how can we make sure that our children, his grandchildren, will continue to have fresh drinking water, will continue to be able to hike and be a part of nature. And then that was what was most important to them. So many times those conversations around legacy and the future and your children, they are multi-generational, and they should be. And then I also will ask our clients to imagine a big number. If they were to give, and it was at the most that they possibly could give. So for example, if they had $1 million and could only give it to one organization, which organization would they choose and why? And you can learn a lot about individuals' priorities. You can help reflect on what's important to you. When you have an opportunity, you can imagine an opportunity where you had one shot to make a difference. Where do you think that would be? And we get into lots of philosophies around philanthropy. We talk about theories of change and how that can be used as a tool to help you begin to build a strategy around taking actions. But generally, once you begin to explore these questions, once you've come up with answers for them, you're likely you're in a better place to understand how you can align your values with your giving. You'll be in a better position, really, to build the strategies upon which you can take actions. And so after you've articulated the why and the what, then you can think about the how, the when, where, and with whom. So many individuals they have an idea. They may have an idea that they want to start a private foundation, for example. But a private foundation is only a tool. It's a mechanism to make a gift. It doesn't necessarily mean that you will be effective. It doesn't necessarily mean that by having that private foundation, you'll be able to give in a way that is aligned with your values. So that's why I think it's so important to spend time to identify why giving is important to you and what it is you'd like to accomplish with your gifts of time and financial resources.
Thank you so much. Jessica, I'm going to skip over to you now. So Marguerite talked about impact investing because I know that's something that she advises her clients in, and it's something that I have a really big interest in, and it's what you do. So after working with McDonald's Corporation, where you created sustainable sourcing strategies, you joined an accelerator called the Impact Engine and launched impact investing. Can you tell us what exactly is impact investing? And then after that, can you tell us a little bit about Impact Engine, your mission, and how you define and measure impact in the work that you do?
Sure. So impact investing is quite simply investing for both financial return and impact, or positive social or environmental impact. It could be all different kinds of impact. People can define it many different ways, and it can be all different types of financial return. Some people are trying to, make, whatever market rate impact, financial returns are. And others are saying, I'm okay if I just get my money back. I'm making a financial return and I'm having the impact I want. So that's what the field is, or the act of impact investing is. At Impact Engine, we really focus on what we call product-based impact. So we invest in companies that make and sell products or services that directly in and of themselves improve education, health, economic empowerment, or environmental sustainability. There are many other types of impact investing. For example, place-based impact investing, where you might make an investment specifically to create jobs or opportunity or development in a certain neighborhood or state or country. And there's others beyond that as well. But that's what we focus on. And we think about measuring impact, from the very moment when we start to meet a company to decide whether we want to make the investment. So as part of our due diligence process, we're not just judging, what's the leadership like, what are the financial opportunities, what's the product market fit, all of those things that any typical investor might do. We're also asking, what is the impact here? How do you know this is the impact? How would we validate that? How will we measure it? And there's really three main types of measurements we look at. One is scale. So how big could this impact be? You could have a really impactful product, but if 3 people use it, your total impact is still small. We look at efficacy, so effectiveness of that product. So if 10 million people use your product, but it actually doesn't move the needle on education or health or whatever you care about, that's also not high impact. And then the third aspect for us is accessibility. So kind of to the theme of this evening, we want to make sure that the people who really need it are going to be able to access the product. And it's not charitable. It's not that they would get it for free, but that the market in that space works in such a way that it's accessible. So for example, you can imagine a healthcare product that if it's covered by insurance, including like Medicare and Medicaid, it's going to be accessible to a wide swath of people. Maybe not as many as we would like, but a very wide swath, versus if it's the same product and it's only accessible if you can pay yourself as a private payer patient, it's going to be accessible to very few people. So that's kind of the third aspect of what we look at in terms of impact measurement.
Can you share an example of a social impact venture you might invest in or that you have invested in, just to give us an idea, something that you're excited about that's applicable to what we're talking about tonight?
Yeah, it's always, people are always asking me, pick a company to talk about. And I always say it's like a little bit like choosing a child. It's like, which one is which one are you going to give the airtime to? But I thought relevant to tonight's theme, is a company we invested in, I think about a year ago. It's called Climb Credit. And what they do is essentially, they help finance access to alternative education paths. So not 2- and 4-year universities, but like professional certificate programs. So it could be coding boot camps, could be cosmetology school, could be, operating a crane. These are the types of things that usually take 12 months or less. But most importantly, they only partner with those programs that have a track record of actually graduating people into higher paying jobs. And so it's very much a win-win for the people, mostly adults, who are applying and going through these programs and seeking better economic opportunity. And it gives them a financing tool to attain those opportunities that they may not have otherwise been able to access. And again, it's a win-win because they've built it into their contract with the schools that the school shares the risk in continuing to deliver that high quality outcome. So let's say the student takes out the loan, which Climb Credit finances. Climb Credit will sort of get the payback from the loan. The first, say, 75%, they go ahead and pay the school. And they say, here's your money. You educated this person. Good job. But they hold back the last 25% until that person actually gets a better paying job. And so the school shares in that risk. So I think that's a great example in the economic empowerment space for us, of where this is a really great business, actually. They're growing really well. They're making money on making loans, but they're doing it in a way that's really thoughtfully and measured around producing better economic outcomes for the people they're serving.
Thanks, that's a great example. We are closing in on our final few minutes here, and I wanted to circle back to all three of you and pose a hypothetical question, which I kind of posed to Marguerite, but I'd love to hear you expound on these a little bit more, each of you. So let's say that someone has asked you to advise on their investing and giving strategies on how to be more deliberate about making a positive social impact. What would you suggest? And what are the first steps you might recommend they take? Marguerite, you pretty much covered some of that, but is there anything else you want to add? And I would also like for you three to think about the full spectrum of somebody who wants to make a social impact, of somebody who may have more privilege or power, or be able to leverage their influence in the community, but not necessarily make a large investment in something financially, all the way to the person on the other end who has all of that and also might be able to use their discretionary income. I would love to just hear your ideas around what you would suggest they do. Jessica, if we could start with you, that would be great.
Sure. I mean, I think the first thing I would say to people is, and you've kind of already alluded to this, but really use every tool in your toolbox. I think most people, to the extent that they have wealth in particular, or even time that they could volunteer, their first thought is philanthropy. And that's sort of the traditional way to think about, quote unquote, giving back or giving to your community. And I think it's a very critical and important tool. I just want people to think about all the other tools as well. And of course, I care a lot about impact investing. Sam and I are actually personally committed to try to move all of our assets to align with our values. And we've kind of been on that journey for a long time. There's a lot of opportunity to do that in a way that actually doesn't have to sacrifice financial returns and can create a lot of impact. So I would add that. I would add thinking about like how you use your wallet to make purchases. So where do you shop for food or clothes, or, have you thought about what those companies stand for, and you're supporting them with your dollars. I would add civic engagement, right? Who you vote for, how you support people voting in your community. And I would add, I think it's not just if you already have, the type of money where you can have an investment or give back through philanthropy. No matter kind of how many resources you have, how young you are, perhaps, in your career, maybe you haven't built that power up, but you have a voice. And I think, again, back to those same levers, you're buying things, to the extent that you can have choices with that. You might work someplace, you have an employer where you can speak up. My job at McDonald's to influence a $20 billion supply chain actually started as I was an intern, right? Like I had no power, but I was able to be passionate and use my voice and kind of get a conversation started that led to a career and a lot of change. So really just think very broadly about all the ways that you can create impact.
I love your McDonald's story. I think it's really empowering and inspiring for people who are coming into the workforce, and where their potential lies by using their voice and influence. Marguerite, did you have anything that you wanted to add? Any final words?
Just like to share and really kind of build on what Jessica's provided. And that is, I always like to have people start with what they know. If they're interested in a certain area, whether it's education or youth, helping youth, to start there, because they're going to be able to build on a common knowledge that they have. And then I also like to think about resources in pretty much the same way that you might build a portfolio. So when you're thinking about making change, when you're thinking about equity, when you're thinking about creating a world that looks different than it does now and it's better, if you think about all the different ways that you can make a difference, and just as you would build an investment portfolio, you can think about philanthropy as being one lever. You can think about impact investing. You can think about how you can shape policies. You can include in your portfolio just looking at the networks that you have. Are you in a position to mentor other leaders? Can you lead by example and then be a mirror for others to see how the work can be done? And are you in a position to support individuals who have new ideas that haven't been tested? And you put all of that in the mix. And as you are moving through that journey, some of those levers, some of those different portfolio positions, so to speak, you might spend more time doing that. And you might not have resources, say, or you might not be so interested in policy, but you recognize it as being something that's important to creating positive social change. So that's what I would add.
Thank you. I love that. Sam, last words.
A lot of pressure. I think the only thing I would add, and of course echo everything that's been said before, is really don't underestimate the influence you have with how you spend your time and your own actions. You know, no matter how rich anyone gets, you know, it's a drop in the bucket compared to all the people who are richer and all the money in the world. But the time and how you spend it and sends such a strong signal to others. And think about, you know, the talents you have and the relationships you have and the network you have and how you can bring that to bear for those who, you know, may not have access. Some of the things we take for granted, like the ability to have this wonderful group of people together here, you know, that's a privilege that we have and that not everyone has. And so you know, I think about how the organizations I spend my time with, you know, it's visible when I choose to be on boards that are led by female CEOs who maybe have a harder time recruiting board members or other underrepresented minorities. I really try to go out of my way to say, okay, here's someone who doesn't have the access I probably take for granted, and I always try to make myself more available and to do everything I can to try to share the access I have. You know, your network is your net worth, some people say, and I think to the extent you can share your network with other people, vouch for someone, help someone prepare for a meeting, make a connection. These are all things that don't cost money, and I think can really make transformative differences for others. So maybe just one more way to think about the assets you have and how you can share them with others.
I love the definition of assets being inclusive of talent and time and influence and not just money. So I really appreciate all three of you for being here with us tonight. We are over the moon that you've been able to spend time with us virtually. Thank you for your adaptability and for your commitment to this night's Paying It Forward. If we could all just kind of do like jazz hands or something, or spirit hands, to let everyone know that we are grateful for their time. Thank you to all three of you.
Thank you.
Okay, so we are going to take a 5-minute break to stretch and refill our drinks before coming back for breakout dialogue. But before you leave, here is a question that we want you to be thinking about while you are on your break. Thinking back to that video with Lynn Twist and Oprah, how have you seen a scarcity mindset manifest in your life or work? So we'll be back in a few minutes, 8:05. Listen for the music to come back together, and we'll see you in a few. Thank you, everybody. It's so exciting right now. I'm looking up on the screen and I see my friend Heather, who's calling in from Florida, and I see my brother Casey from New York. So hi, guys.
Hi.
Welcome back, everybody. We hope you had some good dialogue together. I know we were just getting started, and Naima she's just made some friends, I think, and she's going to be following up with Marissa and Jason after this, I hope, for more conversation and dialogue. Maybe some of you feel the same way. And if so, awesome. That's what this is for. Anyways, welcome back. Before our closing words from Zena tonight, just one quick announcement. After this program, we'll email you a few things. First is a program survey. Please fill it out. We do read them. Second is a link to the Universe of Obligation worksheet, which your facilitator may or may have not talked about. JP just threw that up on the screen. This is a take-home activity that we hope that you will put some thought into on your downtime. And maybe if you want to call a friend and discuss with them, or send us some info and feedback on what you found out through that. And also the third thing is a link to register for our next and final session of the series, Practicing Courage, which will be on Wednesday, June 10th at 7 p.m. This will also be virtual. We will be joined by the wonderful Lucas Johnson, Executive Director of Civil Conversations and Social Healing at On Being. If you recall, our launch event for this series was starring Krista Tippett from On Being. And so we're really thrilled to have Lucas join us to kind of bookend the entire experience for us. So I'm thrilled, and I hope you can come on and join us on June 10th at 7. Lucas is currently self-isolating in Amsterdam, so this is not just going to be virtual, it will be a global experience. And if you haven't registered or would like to invite a friend or family member, please do. The link can be found at courageousconversations.us. And I also just wanted to take a second and thank all of you for joining us, and also to thank our facilitators for hosting the breakout session dialogues. Our facilitators are our fellows, and they have all been committed to the entire journey of every session, attending every session, and participating in sessions in between the sessions for the entire year. So yay to our fellows and our facilitators tonight. Thank you so much. Okay, that's it from me. Now to Zena for our final word.
My friends, it has been such a fulsome night. It's hard to imagine a better way to spend 2 hours. Here is what I'd invite you to take away. The author, David Brooks, has a TED Talk. You can watch it. It's 6 minutes. My sister and friend, Jean Hansen, introduced it to me. But in that TED Talk, David Brooks asks a powerful question. He asks, are you living for your resume or your eulogy? Are you living for your resume or your eulogy? Your resume is what you do. It is what you accomplish. It's what you share as you are growing in your career. Your eulogy is who you are. It's how you were a blessing to others. It's how you made a difference in the world. And he claims in this 6.5-minute TED Talk that by living for our resumes, we forget who we are, and that funds what we do. This talk, this time together tonight, is about who we are, because who we are will determine whether we will focus on diversity, equity, and inclusion. Who we are will determine where and how we spend our money. Who we are will determine how we vote, how we leave a legacy, how we impact the world. Are you living for your resume or your eulogy? In the group that I had the privilege to be a part of just now, I asked the women with whom I shared to write down their closing statements, because they were statements of who they are. As we end tonight, in the few moments that follow when music will play, ask yourself, who am I? Who am I? So that whatever tool I pick up, money or influence or power, whatever tool I pick up, I'll use it well because of who I am. Are you living for your resume, or are you living to tell the world who you are? Because who you are is one willing to have a courageous conversation. So beloved, go out clear about who you are and courageously engage the world, because the world needs you and all the courage you can muster. See you in June. Until then, be well, be blessed. Good night, everybody.